Hello there and welcome to part 2 of 4 of this extended portrait painting demonstration. And remember, this portrait painting demonstration will be subdivided into 4 parts so that you can receive the footage and the narration of every single brushstroke involved in creating this painting. Alright, so now that we have all of these large planes established in this area of focus that I did mention that I would focus on much more, I think it's time for another postcard, or should I say postcard? Oh my god. It's time for another post-it note. And I'm not sure I can pronounce this one, but Alizarin, so Alkasarin. Whoops, there goes my brush. So asks, do acrylics even if you haven't learned it, learn on the job? And again, I'm kind of paraphrasing the comments. And you don't have to do anything fancy to get a post-it note. This is just something I'm going to try to do now to review all of the questions and suggestions in the comments section. And again, the last painting I created, the one of Paulden that you saw over the last couple days, I painted that basically, I don't know, 2 days ago now. And so today I read the comments for that video, for the second video. So anyway, getting off topic here. So if you want to get a post-it note in these videos, just go ahead and leave a comment down in the most recent video, because that's the best chance to get your question or your suggestion written down on one of these post-it notes. So to address the acrylics, let's get back to the painting. Acrylic is definitely something that I want to learn. I want to progress even more into it. I'm just a little bit timid because I did make one video about it and I did the most research I can into it, but you know, I was a little bit timid just because I don't really have as much experience with acrylic as I do with oil paint. But I will do my best to get into that, and I also want to get into watercolor as well. You know, it's nice to break out of your natural element once in a while. Natural element meaning, you know, you have seen me create much more stuff with oil paint. So anyway, what you're seeing me do is I'm mixing up ivory black, titanium white, and then I'm mixing right onto the flesh tones. And some of you may know what this color combination is going to be for. So at this point, if you have any idea why I'm mixing up this gray on top of the flesh tone, go ahead and comment down below. And I'll just tell you now. So what I'm mixing up this little gray scale that has a tiny bit of flesh tone for is for the sclera. And remember, the sclera is the white of the eye. And remember, the white of the eye is not white. But you want a color that's kind of cool, but not per se just blue. But I would aim towards the blue. I would err towards the blue rather than, say, the pink. I'm also going to have another brush just for the sclera. So let's see if I can move the camera here. So I'm going to put in a little bit of Alizarin permanent. All right, bear with me here. I'm going to move the camera again. So Alizarin permanent with the ivory black into this region of the palette. Okay, a little more Alizarin permanent. And you'll see why I'm mixing this in a second. Alright, so you're now in close-up shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the light for the sclera. And I'm going to treat the eye like a sphere. So there's the first little brush stroke for the light on the sclera. Remember, the white of the eye is not white. Even though that looks white on the, probably looks white on the screen, on the computer screen or the laptop screen or iPhone or wherever you tend to be watching this, it's not straight white. It just looks really light because all of the values are still kind of relatively dark around it. So remember, I mixed up that Alizarin permanent mix, yep, for that, just to put in a little more of a dark accent. And I'm actually going to wipe some of the paint off of it, and I'm going to use it in a second here. But now I want to get a little bit of a darker gray. I'm just manually moving the camera So a little bit of a darker gray with the same brush. And I'm just going to manually move the camera again. Okay, so I want that gray over here, somewhere over here. And I am reaching over my camera, which is kind of a funny position right now. There. It might be too blue, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it mix with the color underneath. And hopefully that'll take care of some of the stuff that's too blue. So like I said, I'm treating this like a sphere. So if this were like a sphere, it would be lighter here just because the light is hitting it more and then darker as it gradates around there. Let's go ahead and do that. This is very odd. I've never done this before, but it's kind of interesting. So we're seeing how the light is going all around here. And if there ever was an awkward stage, I mean, this is definitely it. So now what I'm going to do is use the other brush that had the darker color. And I'm actually letting the paint mix automatically as I apply the brush stroke. See that? So that's a way to kind of economize your brush strokes. I'm also being cautious of how much of this white, or sorry, the white of the eye I'm showing. So I'm being cautious of how much is going to show. So that's a little bit better. So I think I just took you on a little bit of a roller coaster there with the appearance of the painting. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return to the palette. And with the same brush that had the dark, I'm going to go ahead and just automatically adjust it by using the value web on the palette. And we're going to start using these values now to add some more planes. That's for another plane. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off some of the paint just using the paper towel, and pretty much just the paint that's on the brush, and just taking some out with the paper towel. And now I'm going to use that brush and the paint that's still wet to kind of create this little gradation of tone. See that? And I'm letting the colors mix automatically on the painting, trying to economize the amount of time I spend mixing paint and maximize the effect that each brush stroke will have. And now you have another close-up shot of the palette, so we're going to get another warm dark, and let's just mix right into this. So Alizarin Crimson Permanent, and that is Alizarin Crimson Permanent, the Winsor and Newton brand, is a very nice and rich dark. It's very similar to the Gamblin version of it. At this point, I can't really notice any difference between them. So just mixing right onto this, I want something that's a little bit dark and red. And we're going to put that right into here. And then I'm just going to wipe off some of the paint again, just with the paper towel. Hopefully this will work. So now I'm going to just use what's on the brush. Let it mix automatically with the paint that's still wet. So now we just use that to create a little bit of a transitioning plane. Now we're going to get another dark value. So mixing these colors. And that's going to go for the upper eyelid right over there. Pushing it a little darker than need be. Going to just take some of the paint off the brush using the paper towel. And again, I'm going to put in a little indication of a dark shape over here. Super simple. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a clean brush. So this is a clean synthetic brush. Just going to kind of soften that shape a little bit. And we're going to use that clean synthetic brush to kind of merge or bridge this gap here, literally. See that? See how usable and malleable and flexible the oil paint is? And now with the brush that I used for the sclera, I'm just going to add a little bit more titanium white and some neo Megilp. And a little bit of cadmium green. And hopefully, actually, you know what? Let's use another little trick here. I'm going to use the back side of the brush. See this? And we're using the brush. We're going to use the brush backwards to put in this little highlight. Okay, it's not really working. I'm going to need a little bit more light. There, see that? That's super bright. That's way too bright, but that actually was a very nice mark to make with the backside of the brush. So again, with the dark brush, we're just gonna, there we go, just shape the little highlight a little better. There we go. Super simple. And let's have some more fun here with the back side of the brush. Let's get this darker value. We'll put in this little secondary highlight. I think that shows. Alright, so now we're going to transition into big picture mode again shortly, but I think that there's still a little more of an angle like this for the eye. There we go. Just a little more elevation to the peak of convexity. So the top of the roller coaster over there. So now, let's see here, switch to, say, this brush that we used for the sclera. And let's just do whatever. Let's just mix it right into here. And I just want a light, somewhere in approximately this value family right here. Okay, so I want this to be a little bit of the highlight that we see somewhere over here. There, don't need really too much for that. Alright, so big picture mode. So now I have some decisions to make because I really like this eye and I don't want the mouth to mess with it, just because I know that once I put in the mouth it's going to be kind of a struggle, just because, you know, it's a mouth. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to put in some more shapes for the nose and just slowly kind of work my way towards the mouth. And you know me, you know I don't like to do everything. You know I don't like to paint in the same way all the time, every time. And I just want to show you, that you don't have to approach things in the same fashion all the time. So I'm going to want a little more I think, specificity to this color here for the maxilla region of the face. So I think I'm going to have to switch back to those larger synthetics. And let's just clean off the brushes first. This is going to be the first time I actually have cleaned any brushes in this painting. And that's why you see that I've used so many brushes, just to avoid having to clean them. But I think it's time to clean these. And that's going to lead me to question of the day. So question of the day, I'm curious about this one. I get this question a lot from people about how they dispose of their rags. You know, like when you use odorless mineral spirits and you clean out the rags. And I know that there's a metal canister to, you know, there's a specified metal canister to get rid of potentially harmful things, such as a rag full of odorless mineral spirits that you use to clean off your brushes. You know, I've just been throwing them out. I mean, I let them dry. You know how the oil paint tends to kind of dissipate into the air. I let it kind of dry. I don't usually like to throw away, you know, a rag that has a lot of mineral spirits onto it. But what do you do? How do you dispose of your rags when you're, of course, using oil paints? That is the question of today. And please do let us know how you deal with, you know, those rags, because I get that question a lot. And I'm curious as to what other you know, oil painters do with their rags. So I'm using a little more flake white just because I want a little bit more consistency to this color. And I want a little intermediate value, so I want to bridge this value into that value. So I want a little more of a orangey tone for this area here. It's definitely going to be warmer. And not that, you know, saturated. So I can actually drop the saturation a little bit and make it a little cooler with the Alizarin permanent. Now we're going to get some very complicated flesh tones that are being basically, like, literally built right on top of the previous flesh tones. And that's pretty good. I like this color. What's more important, however, is that the value is working. And the fact that you can barely see the change in value, you know, I do want the value to drop a little bit over here, but the fact that I'm able to sandwich this value into these areas, I think, is important. And now for the mouth, I'm not going to jump into lips or anything like that right away. Rather, I'm going to look at the structures surrounding the mouth, so the bottom of the orbicularis oris over here. You know, I've heard a lot of people pronounce it orbicularis oris, but it's spelled with an R, orbicularis oris. So if you know about that anatomical stuff, and in particular the pronunciation, can you comment down below as well? Is it orbicularis oris or obicularis oris, as I've heard many people say it? Don't know. I'll put in a little shape there for kind of a suggestion of where the mouth is going to fit. And already we're starting to get into an awkward stage as we start to introduce another element of this picture, and that's okay. So a little bit lighter, and we're going to change the hue a little bit cooler. So with the cadmium green, and that cadmium green is a Gamblin color, I like to change up the value and make the hue a little cooler using cadmium green. And it's only recently that I've been using cadmium green, at least for this purpose. And again, that's for the introduction of another plane. That's going to be for the top area of the orbicularis oris. Orbicularis oris is pretty much all of this structure containing the mouth. I'm going to let this drop in value very subtle now. So see how we're going to use this. You'll see what I mean. Okay, so see how we used these values, so this value web, to introduce more variation into these plane changes, and that's why I like to keep these mixtures the way they are, you know, going from light to dark, with the exception of that thing here, but it helps me to, you know, like rapid fire, I used to call it, basically just rapid fire from the palette to the painting. And let's see if we can start to now put in the delineation for the mandible. You know, the mandible is the area I usually struggle with the most in terms of painting a face. So I think that's about the angle that I want. And now I'm going to want to have a very specific color for the chin. So it's actually a little bit warmer. I perceive that flesh tone to be a little bit warmer. Again, I'm taking my time with this painting, and I'm trying to paint at my own pace. And we all know that portrait paintings take a very long time. So there's a very good chance I may have already split this video up into segments. So again, I think with the last one, I made it 45 minutes, about 45 minutes each. This one might be longer. We'll see. And I'm trying to get this plane, it's a very subtle one, but from here to here, there's like a very, very subtle change. So from here to there, there's a little chop. So let's see if I can describe it better in close-up. So this is facing the light more and more and more right here. This is the point where the plane, or maybe right there. So this is the point where the plane starts to turn inwards like that. So that's why, as you see right here, I'm getting a darker value. And that's definitely the wrong color, but I'm getting a darker value so that this area right here starts to turn away from the light, very subtle. So it's a very subtle plane change from here to here, and even from here to here. So I think what's starting to get in my way is this. So again, this is why I like to use a glass palette. So see how with the palette knife, I'm able to easily just subtract. Yep, that's why I like to use glass palettes for these purposes. So now let's try to get this color and value. So cadmium red. I don't like having that gap there, however, so I'm going to try to recharge this shape here. So bear with me here. So yellow ochre. And you're also kind of seeing another recap into how I mix these flesh tones. So a little bit of alizarin permanent and the ivory black, the burnt umber. Alright, that should be good. So now let's go ahead and try to get that very delicate color mixture. So I'm gonna need flake white for this for sure. So I want to add more pigment, but I also don't want to raise the value that much. So let's see. This one right here is warm. It's kind of closer to the pinkish family than the orangish family. There we go. I think that's the value that I want. Very subtle, however. There we go. Now you're starting to see how that's angling down towards this area here. And we'll even use this into here for the bottom plane. And it's a very delicate value change, however, so if I overdo it, then the structure will kind of lose its integrity, which is possible, but you know, it's alright. You can always come back in and make it more accurate later. Alright, so I've definitely been afraid of putting in those lips for too long, so I think now is the time. So we're going to get the dark brush again, and in this area of the value family, I'm going to just try to make it a little bit lighter and a little bit warmer. So that's why I'm using cadmium red medium. Alright, so I'm going to relate this point to this point. That's going to be my first little guesstimation for where the corner of the mouth is going to fit. Maybe that's too low. Yeah, I think it could be too low. So maybe it'll fit around there. So now the next thing I'll do is, let's see, halftone brush. So I'm going to make the halftone brush a little bit warmer and pinker in this area of the palette. And I'm going to go for the upper lip. So I tend to aim for the middle of the upper lip first. I'm not too worried about the exact shape of the lips just yet. Rather, I'm just trying to get some information on here. And remember, like I said in the last one a lot, the introduction of a new structure or a new thing, a new element in the painting will always introduce a new awkward stage. And it's okay. You know, it's okay if I'm a little bit concerned with how the mouth is going to fit relative to all the other shapes that I spent so much time with. And the key is to maintain those relationships. Relate every part to one another. We are seeing the entire thing all at once, and by the entire thing I mean pretty much just the face for now. So this is a very practical way to construct a portrait. And I'm not that worried of the, I'm not that worried with the outside, you know, the contour. A lot of artists will kind of go for that contour first. But lately, it's just been my preference. Lately, I've been kind of staying away from outlines. And I've just been trying to see simple shape. And I'm just trying to observe that contour. Now, as I get more into focus, forgive me because I am probably going to be a little bit more quiet. And just like I said before, it's okay to give yourself more room, which is what I'm doing with that lower lip. And you got to be brave. Especially with portrait. Portrait's definitely a subject of painting where people will just naturally find something to pick at you about. Like, oh, the lower lip is too far down, which of course it is because I'm going to cut into that. But anyway, you know, people always find something with portrait. And that's just because we're so used to seeing portraits. We're so used to seeing images of people and faces all the time. We're going to get that little tiny brush again, and we're just going to add a little bit more medium to it. And we're going to just get the burnt umber. And what was I talking about? Yes, the viewers tend to be a little bit less forgiving about portrait. So I think portrait kind of inherently is just something that's very daunting, frightening to try to, you know, take into this kind of way. You know, like I'm not afraid to just pull the lips out so I can come back in with what I'm doing now and to draw it. And that's a natural fear that happens when we're painting portraits, and it's just something that we have to, you know, just accept that there's always going to be a kind of a fear factor in portrait. In particular, you know how people always tear us apart for getting the lips a little bit off or the mouth a little bit off, or I mean the nose or whatever. But always remember why you're painting. Why are you even painting a portrait? Always remember that. And most of us, you know, unless it's a commission or something, most of us are painting because we enjoy painting. And when you're painting a portrait, don't worry that much about trying to get the perfect photographic rendition or the perfect likeness of the model. You know, it's a painting first. It's a portrait second.